Do you feel for those mothers who lost their children and babies to senseless gang and youth violence? Do you have a message of consolation for those mothers?
Yeah, I do. Like with Yummy, when he passed on, you know, I know that hurt his family. I know it hurt the family of the female he supposedly have, you know, shot. Just recently, this lady wrote me named Clovis Benjamin from San Francisco, and she's a male woman, and she was writing me, telling me about her son, her nephew had just been killed, and the day before he died, he was like, I'm going to get Tupac.
A young man that some would say wasn't loved by anyone, Robert Yummy Sandifer. Robert Sandifer was born on March 12, 1983 in Chicago, Illinois to his mother, Lorena Sandifer. Lorena was an 18-year-old mother of 3 at the time who struggled with drug abuse and fell into prostitution to support her habits. His father, Robert Atkins, wasn't present due to him being incarcerated for various drug and weapon charges. Throughout Lorena's life, she had been arrested over 30 times for prostituting, and many of which was drug-related. She also had a long history of run-ins with the state's child protective services, and it was said she periodically lost and regained custody of her children all the time. At 22 months old, during one of Lorena's child protective service visits, an examination was performed on Yummy, and it showed that he had cigarette burns on his arm and neck, as well as snake-like bruises, as if he had been beaten with an extension cord. When confronted by child services, she initially blamed his father, but later stated that that was a lie. And on another occasion, his sister was brought into the emergency room with burns on her genitals. Lorena claimed that she had fell on a radiator, but due to the severity and position of the injuries, the nurses knew that that was impossible. Reports stated that Lorena wasn't even stable enough to meet her own needs, let alone meet the needs of her own growing family. By the time Yummy was 3, he and his siblings were removed from his mother's custody, and the police found them in the house alone with no supervision, and was sent to live with their grandmother, Janie Fields, in the Roseland neighborhood of Chicago. The grandmother's residence contained over 19 children on some occasions, and by most accounts, her home was not much better than his mother's. With her house being so full of other children, it made it very easy for a 6-year-old Yummy to sneak away whenever he wanted to, and go wherever he pleased. Reports stated that in Yummy's younger age, he loved to swim, draw, and he loved cars. He also loved gyros, which we call Euros, chocolate chips, and Oreo cookies, hence where he got his name Yummy from. By the age of 8, Yummy gave up on school and turned to the gang and criminal life. It was stated that Yummy looked up to the gang members, so he pledged his life to the Black disciples, which meant to Yummy, who already lacked love and nourishment, that he now had a place that he belonged to, sort of like a family. This is exactly what the gang members preyed upon: young Black males who were poor, no family or friends, and no education with little opportunities. The Black disciples' older or higher ranking members knew that despite any crime that the young ones committed, the worst they would get was a slap on the wrist or be sent to a juvenile detention center. Yummy went from stealing to robbing houses to stealing cars and racking up an extensive criminal record. In January 1992, he was arrested for unknown charges, and later that year, at the age of 9, he was prosecuted for robbery, but the case was dropped when the witness didn't show up. In June of 1993, he was among several other defendants charged in a case of auto theft and arson, in which one case was dropped, but the other he pled guilty to, and was sentenced to 2 years probation while he was only 10 years old. Then in June of 1994, Young was taken from his grandmother's house after being caught driving a stolen car and was committed to Lawrence Hall Youth Service, Maryville Academy, a home for neglected and abused children. But Yummy quickly escaped and fled to the streets. By the time he was 11, he had been charged with 23 felonies and 5 misdemeanors. On the 28th of August 1994, this is when a lot of people's lives would change. One of the high-ranking gang members ordered Yummy to do a gang favor. So he put a 9mm semi-automatic pistol in his hands and told him he needed to take out 2 of their rival gang members, who they were at war with at the time. Standing at 4 foot 6 inches tall, weighing about 86 pounds, Yummy approached a group of boys standing at South Perry Avenue around 6:30 p.m. and asked another kid what gang he was affiliated with. When the kid told him he wasn't in a gang, Yummy pulled out the gun he was given and at near point blank range and opened fire. As the young kid started to run, he was struck in the stomach and in the spinal cord. Yummy knew everyone was watching at the time, so he quickly ran off before the police arrived. Once the police got there, one of the officers went to the kid and asked, "Who shot you?" In which he replied, "Yummy was the one that shot me." As soon as the officer was about to call in Yummy as the suspect of the shooting, he received word that there had been another shooting around the corner on 108th Street. Yummy had reemerged and unloaded his gun wildly into a crowd of kids that were playing football. One bullet would strike a young man, Sammy C., in the leg, and another would hit Shavon Dean that was 30 feet from her doorstep in the head. The young lady was rushed to the Roseland Community Hospital, and in less than an hour, she was pronounced dead. Shavon was a 14-year-old young lady that was said to have a bright future. Reports stated that she always had a smile on her face and was always happy. After Yummy ran out of bullets, he fled the scene again, and the hunt from the police was on. By midnight of August 29th, the Chicago police was working with the FBI agents investigating and frantically searching for Yummy. Detectives followed up with relatives, known neighbors, and tips that had been given of Yummy's whereabouts. After a few days of not finding him, Yummy's case became a huge headline for media outlets and the news. Dozens of police officers, tactical units, gang crime officers, and detectives joined in the search and fanned out looking for Yummy as far as Milwaukee, nearly 2 hours away. Now, it was stated that Yummy's grandmother, Janie, reportedly said she received 3 calls earlier that week from someone who hung up without saying anything. So she went out and bought a caller ID device, and later that night, Yummy called her on the payphone. She stated Yummy asked, "What is the police looking for me?" Which she replied, "You haven't done anything wrong. Just let me come and get you." But when she pulled up, he wasn't there. And with all the news and attention Yummy's case was bringing, the Black Gangster crew leader got word that if Yummy was caught or turned himself in, he would definitely squeal to the police. So on August 31st, 1994, the gang leader summoned 2 brothers, Craig Hardaway, who was 16, and Derek Hardaway, who was 14, to get rid of Yummy. The 2 brothers drove around the city and spotted Yummy sitting on a neighbor's porch at South Edbrook Avenue. Derek approached Yummy and told him that they were on their way out of town and to come get in the car so they could put him in hiding, so the police wouldn't find him. Once Yummy got in the car, the brothers rode around to a near tunnel tagged with gang graffiti and told him to get out and get on his knees. Once he was down, Craig took out his gun and shot him twice in the back of the head. 3 days later, Robert Yummy Sandifer's lifeless and bloody body was found under the railroad tracks at 108th Street near Cottage Grove Avenue. Over 400 mourners came out to the Youth Center Church of God in Christ to say goodbye and reflect on the short life of Yummy, while he laid there in a small coffin with a stuffed teddy bear beside him. And on that same day, he was supposed to be starting in 6th grade. Thankfully, Chicago gave Sharon Latrice Davis a splendid funeral. Over 800 family members, friends, civil rights figures, and more showed up to her funeral while she laid there in her white casket wearing her white dress with her black silky hair curled the way she always liked it. As far as the Hardaway brothers, they were both found guilty, with Craig being sentenced to 60 years and Derek being sentenced to 45 years. At such a young age, all these young children's lives were taken away. Yummy's death was the 637th murder in Chicago that year, and there isn't no telling how many followed due to the gangs and violence.
At 36, Craig Hardaway is older, wiser, but he's also a little nervous when it comes to this interview.
I always saw media as the enemy.
20 years after a notorious murder that thrust him into the national spotlight, for the first time ever, he and his younger brother Derek are talking about the case that changed their lives forever.
It took me years to really admit and accept my role in it.
What happened that night?
Chaos.
Despite numerous requests over the years, this is the first interview Craig Hardaway has agreed to do.
For me, it was more like identity. It was more like, okay, I want to belong to something. I want to be a part of something.
It's an addiction. It's a strong addiction, and it pulls you in quick.
It was a clear black night, a clear white moon. Warren G was on the streets.
The summer of 1994 saw Nate Dogg and Warren G's Regulate topping the charts, O.J. Simpson preparing for the trial of the century, and Chicago well on its way to recording 930 homicides, the second highest on record. Among the dead, 14-year-old Shavon Dean, shot in the head by a stray bullet during a shooting spree in the city's Roseland neighborhood that injured 2 other teens. Chicago police quickly identified 11-year-old Robert Sandifer as the gunman. That led to an intense 3-day manhunt. Gang leaders decided that Robert needed to be silenced because he knew too much, so they ordered Craig to kill him.
Why did Robert die?
By means of not my control.
And was it your life versus his life?
Absolutely.
You thought it was that simple as either you do this or you die.
And that's how it always boils down. It's not like any wiggle room when you live in that lifestyle.
So you're saying you had no other choice?
Yes, that's what I'm saying.
Derek refused to leave his brother's side.
A lot of people don't know that he actually took me home, and I can just feel someone right. So when I asked him what's going on and he told me everything, I refused to let him go by himself.
I should have been more of a big brother and just get out, right? But at the time, that ain't the way you think. I'm still a minor, we still kids.
Hours after the murder, both brothers were in custody, and months later, they were convicted felons. Craig, 60 years for murder, Derek, 45 for driving the getaway car. They were the only two ever tried in the case, even though they say others were involved.
Why not tell?
Because I was believing in the foolishness they was telling me, as far as the gangs and that lifestyle.
What did they tell you?
How they gonna be there, support, take care of us, our families, everything.
And?
Nothing. Literally nothing. No letter, no contact, no money for me, my family, they needs, no lawyer, literally nothing.
Abandoned by their fellow gang members and isolated from their families, the brothers have spent the past 20 years rehabilitating themselves. Both have gotten their GEDs and associate degrees. Derek is cultivating his landscaping skills by working in the prison garden, and Craig is involved in anti-violence programs. But for Craig, there is one piece of unfinished business, reaching out to Yummy's family, who has not responded to him or us.
What would you say to them?
Wow, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'll answer any questions that they may have concerning that night, leading up to that night.
Both brothers say they think about Yummy's murder every day. The tears, they say, have long since dried up. Instead, they're focused on getting out one day and making sure that others don't end up on the same path that led them to prison.
I think if they hear it from someone that lived it and been through it, it might reach them a little bit better.
I know most people listen to this and be like, what the hell do this dude know? He been in jail for 20 years. He should have did what he did, yada, 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 yada. That still don't take away from the message. Value your life. You matter. Look in the mirror and tell yourself that you matter. Accept that the responsibility of your life ultimately rests with you.
Derek Hardaway is eligible for parole in 2016. Craig Hardaway will be eligible in 2024. Neither brother plans to return to the Roseland neighborhood where they grew up for fear that they could be drawn back into a lifestyle that Derek says will only lead them back to prison or to a grave. Tanya Francisco, WGN News.
All right, thanks to Tanya. That was the first time I ever heard an age that young, 11, with Yummy Sandifer. That gripped not only the city but the nation, but the city for years.
Yeah, on the cover of Time magazine. Amazing.
Yeah.